Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining Zoe and I today. I'm really pleased that you are here with us. It's going to be a bit of a show and tell, I guess, a little bit today. We're going to share a little bit of our story with you about who we are, how we've come about our own whys, our missions, our purpose, however it is you want to label that, and share a little bit of how that has now turned into what we're doing and how it influences our work and our life. So that's what we're going to share with you a little bit today. We'd love your feedback, your questions, anything like that at all. Please pop those into the comments. Maybe give us a little bit of a shout out of where you are in the world. I'm in a very grey and miserable Manchester today, which is looking particularly gloomy. But yeah, tell us if you are in somewhere where there's some beautiful sunshine. That certainly helps my mission and my why, that's for sure. So we'll just do quick intros and then we will start sharing a little bit about our whys with you. So Zoe, do you want to give a little intro?
Yeah, of course. I was just laughing when you said it's grey in Manchester. I'm in Buckinghamshire. I'm sitting in my office with 3 light sources on. It's that miserable outside. Actually, no, let's go 4 if we're going to count the window. I've got a window, a big light, a side light, and a ring light, and it's just feeling
amazing.
I think we're different. It's when we've had such a nice weekend, isn't it? It was such a sunny weekend. Although kudos to the person I saw walking in the rain with shorts, flip-flops, and a jacket this morning, walking their dog.
Wow.
Yeah, that I like that. It's summer. It's summer. It's May. I'm putting this. So anyway, weather by the by, very, very British of us. Hi everyone, I'm Zoe. If you see me glancing down, it's because I've got our live stream on my phone, which is really strange, just so I can see any questions that come in. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing. So my name's Zoe Poulton. Some of you might follow me on LinkedIn. You might have seen some of my stuff that I put out about change management. I, funnily enough, work in change management. My company is called Glass Ripple Consulting, and I work in training, upskilling, and also consulting. So usually what I do is I specifically work with HR, OD, L&D, people consultants, so people in the people space to help upskill in change management. And then I also work with the companies as well to help with the leadership and the management and how they can support change managers and sort of people leading through change. So that is kind of where I am now. I'm sure we will talk a little bit about how I got here. But Anwen, I will hand over to you for your intro.
Thank you. So my name's Anwen Bottois. My business is Purple Sky Consulting. I've had 20-ish years in the HR profession in different roles, predominantly generalist, and then moving into kind of more change-related functions. And I'll share a little bit about how I transitioned into my own business in a little moment. I focus on helping HR and executive teams support their leaders of leaders to be confident, capable, effective. And I really want to help them have happier, healthier, and higher performing teams, and for those leaders to be leading on that. So that's where I focus my work, and I do that through coaching and development programs as well. Quite personalised, one-to-one approach. I love that one-to-one approach. I think it really helps the individual, and I think I deliver well in that space. It makes it a lot easier for me. And so that's the work that I do. So I'll start, if that's all right, Zoe, in terms of talking in terms of that why space, and then I'll hand over to you to share.
Yeah, go for it.
I think what's interesting about the why, the purpose, the mission, whatever label you want to give that, is that it's definitely changed throughout the years, throughout my life, throughout my career. I'm sure you found that as well, Zoe. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. You know, I think actually it's really healthy to kind of just check in regularly with yourself and in terms of what you're wanting and what's important to you and how's that focusing on the work that you're doing. So I think that's a really useful thing to do. Doesn't have to be every 5 minutes, but at least every 12 months, just doing a check-in on what you're doing. And now I very much use that. Before, I used to use it with my team in terms of the work we were doing, and now it's very much in that space of what does that mean for my business and the work that I'm doing in my business. And at that beginning part of my career, I guess there was a piece of, you know, this is about me so much more, and kind of building my career and my expertise and my knowledge. And, exactly. You know, my little HR assistant taking over the world and kind of conquering the world in the HR space. And absolutely. My intention was to kind of be into that HR director space and kind of really influence at that level. That's where I wanted to be. Those were my goals, my aims. And that kind of started to shift as I moved through my career, and it was very much then moving more when I started leading teams to be about, actually, I really want to help here. I really want to have an impact here. I want to have a positive impact, and that's what really matters to me. And then we got to that wonderful, terrifying, transformative period of the pandemic, when things changed for probably all of us in one way, shape, or form. And it was terrifying in lots of ways. And then for other people, it has been a really positive opening of a door for something else, for something new. And that's what it was for me. And my husband and I both turned 40 that 2020. So it was a bit of a moment of, oh my goodness. It was a year I really started to take some control around some long-standing mental health issues that I'd had. And it was now a case of me realising that I wanted a bit more out of my life that wasn't just about my work. I didn't want my feeling about me just to be about my work. However, work's really important. It pays the bills. And also it does give us impact and value and something to do with our days. And that's okay until I've won the lottery and can get the hell out of it. Me doing exactly what I like.
You notice when you figure out your why, like we're talking about now, when you figure out your why, you start to actually almost not view work as work, and it becomes that, it just becomes part of your life. And my husband and I were talking about retirement the other day, because I was talking about investing, and I just said to him something that I never thought I'd say. I was like, but I don't know if I'll retire. I don't know.
Really?
I mean, there'll be some sort of tapering off of work, I'm sure, but I think that's when you find your why, like you're saying, and you love what you do. It blurs the lines, doesn't it? Which is why we've got to be so careful with boundaries as well, which we spoke about before we went live, didn't we?
Absolutely. And I think you're absolutely, like, I'm all for retiring. So that's where you and I are quite different. So I think my why and my mission now is very much more centered in terms of, I want to do the stuff when I'm working. I want to do stuff that I love and that contribute to stuff. But also my life and enjoying my life is incredibly important to me. And I think that's where I put that balance in. And I know that's important to you, but for me, I'm like, I'm all right with retiring. I'm totally all right with retiring. So what was interesting during that pandemic time? So my husband and I decided we wanted a lot more flexibility and a lot more travel, particularly in our life. So we sold our house. I gave up my perfectly wonderful job, which I loved. There's no doubt, as managing some of the organisational development and a response piece to COVID and the pandemic had been quite challenging. I was quite exhausted, I think. So when we got to a point where we're like, oh, we've made this realisation about our life in terms of really want to shift how we live our life and experience our life, it became a lot easier to then make that decision to leave that amazing job and to leave that amazing team, which still I miss working with very much. But it made it a lot easier because I knew now that I wanted a better balance in my life. My why was about me as much as anything else. And I think that was a really important pivotal moment. And whilst we were traveling, that gave me then the space and the time to really think about, so what does this mean for the work that I now do? I was pretty clear I didn't want to go back into kind of formal employment in the same way. I knew that the new flexibility and new way of living I had was a shift. There's a shift I'd made. It wasn't really something I wanted to kind of move away from just yet. Not going back just yet. We'll see what happens, who knows. But then it was dialing into, actually, where is it I want to spend my time? What matters here? And I think that point around reflecting on, I really loved my job. I loved leading my team. I loved being in that space of working with a functional area and a department where actually as an individual I had huge impacts on people and what we were doing. And that's brilliant, but also terrifying. And what I realised was that transition of going from kind of somebody who only had very small teams before, or just one person that they were managing, to now managing kind of 4 direct reports, 20 people overall. That was a significant shift, and it had a huge impact on me. Lots of it good, but lots of it incredibly challenging. And that really gave me that focus of, I want to work with leaders making those transitions. I want to work with leaders who are having influence on broader culture than just a small team for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going to matter. I understand that transition that they've made. It's not the same for everybody, absolutely not. But I also get that how much that shift is needed and how much that changes. So for me, that clarity of coming back from that leave and really focusing on that's who I want to be working with is now really helping me to shape the things that I put out into the world, the leadership development program, the coaching that I'm doing. And that makes it so much easier when you're making decisions then of, do I say yes to this? And that really, really has helped me. So how about you, Zoe? Where's your why come from?
Oh, wow. God, where do I start? Interestingly, what you just said, just picked up on something you just said about shaping your, what do you say yes to? A while ago, I had a coach and a mentor who said to me, when you're deciding what you want to do in your own life, in your own entrepreneur journey, in your own business, remember you can only say yes to so many things because there's one of you until you build your team, etc. So when you say yes to something, what are you saying no to? What's it closing off because you're saying yes? And that's fine because you've got to have that balance. You say yes to some things, no to others. But you better make sure the thing you're saying yes to aligns to everything that you want from life. Otherwise, the stuff that you've had to say no to could be a better alignment. And that really has really shaped what I say yes to. And I'm going to start this right off by saying I am a recovering people pleaser. It's one of those things, and I do believe I'm gonna shout my mum out here, or I'm gonna call my mum out. I think it's sometimes learned behaviour, isn't it? And my mum, bless her, amazing little Indian woman. She is she's a nurse by trade. She was a midwife. You know, she's a really caring person, but she was always a giver. And even now, and my mum, there's about 3 or 4 dress sizes between us. And when I see her and she's got a nice new jumper on, I'll say to her, Mum, I love your jumper. And she'll go, do you want it? Do you want it? And I'm like, yeah, apart from the fact I'm 3 or 4 sizes bigger than you, but also it's yours, keep it. So that people pleasing thing I have grown up with, and I'm recovering people pleaser. And I think putting that boundary in of what aligns with me, what do I say yes to what I say no to, that has been a journey in itself. And that has been over the last sort of 4 years probably. But going back to my why, so you know this, and I think a lot of people watching this will see this from my LinkedIn profile and stuff I talk about. I'm an ex-military officer. I'm a military veteran. I was in the Royal Air Force for 16 years, and I joined really early. And I say early, I was 23. And I think I pretty much spent my 20s and 30s in the military, and you learn, you develop yourself and your sense of self a lot in those years, especially those 20s. And I loved my time in the military. I really did enjoy it. I loved what I did. I worked in air defence. I worked in leadership development. So I used to take cadets through their basic officer training. Absolutely loved that. One of my best jobs I've done. I was in HR as well. So I worked in HR, head of departments in HR. And I loved my time. But I had a really hard time towards the end of my 16 years with toxic workplaces and just really having to decide what I wanted from life. Because we have those switches, don't we, where something happens and we think, is this how I want to spend my next, and I was coming up to 40, which is kind of that catalyst. I was like, is this how I want to spend my next 20 years of employment?
That feeling.
The answer for me, yeah, oh my goodness. And do you know what? I can't figure out if it's a 40 thing or whether actually my contract was coming to an end and it just happened to be at 39 and 10 months. I was due, I could have extended I got offered promotion and extension, but I just had to make that decision for me because my mental health was really starting to suffer in that toxic environment that I happened to find myself in for a couple of years. So I left, took that leap to leave, really supportive husband. And he just said, you know what, you've got to do it for yourself. So you go and do, you pretty much say, go and fly, go and do what you want to do. So I jumped out of the military and I jumped straight into consulting in London. And I worked for Big Four Consulting. I was a change leadership and learning specialist. And I once again found that dissonance, that real dissonance piece of loving what I was doing, but not loving the environment I was in. And it was just, I loved consulting, like what I call the old style consulting, when you go in and actually find out what a company needs and then you create something for them. Potentially not the cookie cutter, here's our, we're going to put it on.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying anyone does that, I'm just saying that's not what I like. So I very much went into consulting for 2-3 years, loved consulting, loved working in the change space, didn't want to work in a big company. So for me, that was my why for leaving corporate, leaving military, leaving corporate and going into entrepreneurship, because I figured out that I'd spent 20 plus years gaining experience, gaining an arm's length of qualifications. And I wanted to use them in a way that could create the most impact of people.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to actually go and help people. And I had to do a little bit of, I suppose, soul searching, really, some real digging into what do I want to do, because my CV is very broad. I'm qualified across a load of different things. I'm experienced because in the military, we change jobs every 2 years. So I've done a lot.
Yeah.
And then I had to make the decision for myself. What do I love doing? And like you, I had to really sit down. And I know you did it through the pandemic. Interestingly, that's when I was leaving the military. I had 4 months off over the summer of the pandemic. Remember, it was a really nice hot summer.
Beautiful.
And I did a bit of soul searching, went to consulting, and then time off. And I just thought, well, hang on a minute. I want to help people who were me. And I don't mean people in the military. I mean people who were in HR, and people who, when I say HR, I'm really sorry, HR purists. When I say HR, I'm talking about people in the people space. So HR, L&D, OD, people consultants, change consultants as well. I loved change, the work I'd done in change. And I wanted to help people in HR who are usually given the job of leading through change, because we're the people specialists. Why wouldn't you give it to us, but give us no training and give us no support? So I wanted to create training in change management for people in the HR space. And when I went into entrepreneurship, I did a lot of work for APMG. I'm an APMG instructor, so I have all that behind me. I've taken something like 120 people through APMG training. I'm a qualified teacher, and I was training APMG, and I'll be really honest with you, I got to the point where I didn't like the APMG course. It was just, there were a week long, 50 to 60 theories, 2 exams, crammed pack, no practical application unless you could do it as a facilitator. And I was consistently getting people saying, oh, it was so much. And I remember one person called, they emailed me to say, can we speak? And I was like, of course we can. I rang him at 10 to 8 in the morning while walking the dog and said, are you okay? Is something? And he went, I haven't slept. I'm so worried about the exam. And that cut me to my core as a trainer. I was like, that's not how we learn. That is ridiculous. So I would like to say this happened nicely. It didn't. My husband was very blunt with me one evening when I was having a whinge about it. And he just turned around and said, Zoe, you're a qualified teacher. You've got 15 odd years in change management experience. Your master's in leadership studies, for God's sake. You used to teach leadership. Why don't you just do it yourself? And I literally, kid Zoe came out, crossed my arms, stamped my feet, and walked out of my living room. Poor Neil, my husband, he lost me for 4 months in my study while I created my CPD accredited training.
Did he have other plans or something? Was he trying to get rid of you?
Well, we suddenly purchased an Xbox in our house at that same time. So not really sure if there was an ulterior motive, but it was my why. And now I feel like I found my sweet spot. I absolutely, those on the program tell me that it's adding value and they're understanding it. And the difference is they can now apply models and they can apply theory, and they realize, much like I was talking about consultancy, there's not one framework and there's not one model. So I teach a lot of them, but what I teach right at the beginning, I use a methodology. It's my own unique methodology called the ACE method: analyze, create, and embed. But I teach when you analyze, that's when you're figuring out the consultancy piece of what a company needs. And then you pick what you need and you create something special for them as the create piece. So a very long, convoluted why, but that is my why.
Stick. So let us know if you've got any questions for us based on what we shared with you in terms of kind of how we've discovered that why. I see from Emma that there's a thumbs up for the recovering people pleasers out there. So we love you. We know you.
An active journey. You catch yourself saying, you're going to say yes and just go, and there's a really good quote by Viktor E. Frankl. I'm going to butcher the quote, my apologies. And actually, book, I think the book's up there. It's something along the lines of, between something happening and our response, we have that bit in the middle where we can choose our response and we can choose our reaction. And I think that's when you're a recovering people pleaser. Before you say yes to something, just take that beat, take a breath, just go, because it doesn't have to have the answer right now.
No. And also, it doesn't matter if you need to change it. Like, you can go with something, realize it's actually not the right thing, and you can change it.
Yeah.
Like this need to achieve perfection in whatever decision you've made, and for it to be viewed as a failure if you go, actually, that's not the right thing. We need to move away from that. We need to just tune into, actually, where are we right now and what do we need? And that's where the magic happens. It's being brave enough to go, that's not working for me. That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. Do you know what, though? For so many years, we've heard things like, I'm not a quitter. Quitting is for, weak people, all this kind of stuff. And actually, quitting is one of the most powerful things you can do. If I hadn't have quit the military, yes, I was at my contract end, but if I had taken that, because they were offering me such a nice job and promotion and all that, if I had not stuck by my own values and realizing that me at 40 was different to me at 23, and I had a different chapter of my life I wanted to go into, because I very much think about life in sort of those chapters, I would have been there, and I just wouldn't have taken that leap, and I would have been miserable, to be honest.
Yeah. It's really interesting what drives some of those decisions as well. And you talked a bit about your husband there, and I know my husband's been incredibly important in that support for decisions and that freedom to make the choices that we've been making. And I think, we're lucky to have those wonderful husbands, but also it's a broader network. 2 years ago, you and I didn't know each other. Now we're working together and connecting on stuff, and I think it's about making deliberate decisions to choose to do things to help you achieve your why and to help you achieve your mission. And that doesn't necessarily mean everything's going to happen just because you've decided something. You actually have to then go, right, that means I now need to translate that into something, and I need to put stuff in place that's going to help me achieve that. And sometimes those decisions aren't right. I'm constantly making tweaks and changes to the stuff that I'm putting out there, and that's okay. Again, that's all part of the learning experience for me, who's never run a business before and who's never done sales and marketing in a sense of a business before. I think as HR people, you get used to kind of selling a message and all those types of things, but it's quite different as an entrepreneur. It's quite different doing it when it's kind of more of a product and service perspective rather than a selling a message within an organization. But I think there's really real crossovers there. So how valuable was it for you for looking at network and kind of broader than, yes, having the support of your husband, but looking beyond that? How useful has that been for putting your why into action?
Okay, so really glad my husband's not on LinkedIn right now because yes, my husband is incredibly supportive, but
I meant by a kick up the backside, by the way.
Yeah. The thing I found, this is the biggest thing, and I don't know if you're the same when you went from corporate work, from working in teams to yourself, pretty much, is there are not that many people that get what you do. So he's really supportive, and he gives me all the space. Yeah, so if you need to go work on a Sunday, you do what you need to do, and it's amazing. But he also doesn't get what I do. He doesn't get the emotional roller coaster of not having an income that's stable. He doesn't get the whole sales and marketing, and actually me having to do not having to, but choosing to do certain things that he's like, oh, and I'm like, no, but this is what I want to do because it's going to bring this in or bring that in. He doesn't get certain things. And on the same side of that coin, he's my biggest cheerleader. So he just tells me I'm brilliant all the time, which is amazing. We've been together 18 years, so I'm very, very pleased he still does that. But what you need sometimes from your business buddies and that group of networking is for people to be critical. And when I say critical, I mean they point out the things that aren't going to work because they've been there, or they say, not even pointing out it's not going to work, they say, oh, just so you know, I've tried this and this is how I found it. So feel free to try it again, but I've literally just had that conversation with someone, a business buddy of mine, who we were on a retreat in Portugal together. And I asked her to look over some of my messaging. It was amazing, that retreat. But she was looking at my messaging, and she just picked out a word that I would use normally in conversation. Yeah. She said, "Oh, I have tried that a few times, and this is what I found worked better. And I'm going to try both." But my husband can't do that.
Yeah.
So I think with the networking, it's finding yourself a group of people. It doesn't have to be loads of people. It's you're gonna resonate. You're gonna connect with maybe a handful of people who you're on the same path, and you can help each other out. And I think that is really, really important.
Constructive criticism. No, and that constructive criticism is really important. And thanks for adding that in, Emma. I think absolutely. And actually, what I found is maybe when I was in my job, because criticism was like, oh God, here's another opinion I've got to take into consideration.
Yeah,
sometimes.
So especially when you've done
exactly, especially when you've already over communicated and over kind of engaged and all those types of things. There's always somebody that comes at the end because they've now read the pack because it's now going live. Anyway, sorry, there's some past trauma clearly coming through there. But the reality is when you are go on.
So that's the difference between that competitiveness within corporate that you sometimes find and that supportive element that we find in entrepreneurship. And yes, there's competition, but I found it to be a really supportive network of people helping each other out and yes, we do get that in some corporates, but I found it and it might have been the corporates I was working for, maybe the military. It felt very much like people were helping themselves first. But people pleasers coming out, isn't it? You should be helping everyone else. But I find it a lot more, it sits more with my values in the entrepreneur world.
Absolutely. And I think you get a lot, once you start building relationships with people in your network in a new way like that. And I think no matter what you're doing, whether it's working for yourself or whether it's in a corporate, not-for-profit, well, whatever that is, making sure you have people around you that are supportive of you and putting you forward in that right way and being there to help you achieve what you're looking to achieve, I think is really important. So I can't believe it, but we are nearly at half an hour already. So I am going to start wrapping us up. We haven't had any direct questions come in, but if you've got any thoughts or comments, please add those into the comments post this live. You're welcome to add that at any time. Maybe tag us so that we make sure we don't miss it. If it's a specific question about kind of our experience, that means we don't miss it. Zoe and I are going to be doing another 3 of these lives over the next couple of weeks. So you'll see those go into the diary, onto the events page shortly. We are going to be talking about some of the key areas of focus for our work. So leadership development, change management, change delivery, and making all those things happen. So by all means, come and join us for that. Zoe, did you want to share about your masterclass as well?
Oh, yeah. So I was talking to Anwen before we went live. I'm giving a little bit of an early opening of this masterclass because I wasn't going to start talking about it until a little bit later in this week. But I thought, hey, we're on live. Let me just throw it out there. So one of the biggest issues I find anyone leading through change, obviously I tend to work with HR professionals, but when you lead through change, you always get resistance because the brain is actually hardwired to resist new things. And there are loads of different neuroscience, scientific research, as I would say it, loads of research about the brain.
I'm not going to correct you on that.
It tells us why. I'm making up words all over the place. So resistance to change is one of those really key things. And what I've done is I've created a masterclass to show you how to overcome those resistances. To make up more words. Resistances to change. So the masterclass is going to be on the 30th of May at 7 p.m. I'm going to open the list today. So what I'll do is I'll pop a link in. All you need to do is sign up, and I'll see you on the 30th at 7 p.m. UK time.
Fantastic. And we will see you next week, hopefully. So again, feel free in the comments if there's a part of our worlds that we look at that you'd really like us to cover in one of the later sessions, let us know and we're happy to kind of look at that too. So feel free to kind of tell us what you'd like to hear. Hope you've enjoyed today and we'll see you next time.